Welcome back to another episode of Generation Elevation. Today, I am joined with a super special guest. One, because he was actually quite an influence in my journey. And he's probably like, how is that even a thing? But really helped me integrate from my move to Melbourne to the Gold Coast. Now, this man is a doctor of osteopath and medicine. He's worked with Olympic athletes and seven-figure business owners. He himself has healed through chronic fatigue. And today I've brought him onto my show to help you guys just elevate your health and well-being. So with that said, I would love to introduce to you Daniel Kirkbride. Hello, Dan. How are you?
Yo, thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure. And like I said in my little intro there, you actually really helped me integrate from life in Melbourne to the Gold Coast. And you hadn't even moved to the Gold Coast yet. So off my memory, I'll tell my little story first and then I'll let you take the floor. But basically, we met online through social media, just in like knowing mutual people, right? And I just remember having chats with you about like the industry. And when I was moving to the Gold Coast, you happened to be staying there that weekend. So it's funny, I spoke about this with a mate yesterday because they were asking me how I got into like the spiritual world and breath work. And I remember that weekend that I first moved, I didn't know anyone. And we ended up going for a walk along the beach and you introduced me to Hillary, who was running a meditation. And she was the one that was like, let me take you to a breath work. And I was like, what's breath work? Then one thing led to another. Now I'm running that over here in London. So Dan, tell me a bit about you, because I know your journey's changed a lot since we first met. Right. I think you just sold your clinic in Melbourne and now you've moved to the Gold Coast as well. So you're speaking on stages, you're working with Olympic athletes, seven-figure business owners. Like, tell me about your journey, like where you started to where you are now, like the key moments for you.
I remember that now. I was thinking when you first said it, I was like, what do you mean? But then I remember vividly walking along the beach for like 20 minutes, being like, where on earth is Hillary? And getting lost and being like, this is awkward. And then she was in this, almost in the bushes, just at the top of the beach. And then, yeah, that's another. I was very much the same with my Gold Coast experience. It's like, never heard of breath work, wasn't really into it. And then like you come to Gold Coast and it's completely different culture, breath work, meditation, the whole like coaching space, spiritual space. So very different to Melbourne. Yeah, my journey, it's been a long one. Time flies, but I feel like at the age of 29, I've lived 50 years. But yeah, I mean, I started off as a personal trainer originally back in Melbourne. My own health issues around just after COVID, actually. Went through some pretty bad like fatigue and some health issues. And yeah, long story short, went through the medical system, got blood tests, you're normal, there's no problems, we can't find anything wrong with you. I'm sure some people can relate to that. And then that led me on my journey of, I guess, where functional medicine began. First and foremost as a client myself, and having really good mentors and coaches in my corner who helped me find an alternative way to heal. And then through that experience, I was like, wow, this is crazy. I feel like I've seen the Matrix. I want to learn so much more about this. I want to share this medicine with everyone else. I don't want anyone else to have to go through this and what I went through. And I guess that sort of started the journey of what I'm doing more so today, which is, I guess, more functional medicine, holistic medicine coaching, rather than, back in the day when I was doing more, cracking backs and training people in the gym, doing more your traditional, I guess, osteo rehab stuff, which obviously is great. But I feel like for a lot of people, I'm sure you've experienced this as well. It's like a lot of those things are just symptoms, and there's so much more deeper stuff underneath when we start to unpack the layers when it comes to people who have their health concerns or ailments. So to me, I just became obsessed with becoming a detective of all things health and trying to really get to the bottom of what's causing these people's health concerns and trying to be that beacon of light and hope for them to heal naturally, like what I had a few years ago when I went through my own struggles.
So for the listeners at home, because I'm sure that there are people listening to this right now actually going through chronic fatigue themselves and probably have no idea. So for the audience who are tuning in today, what are some of like the experiences that you went through whilst you were suffering with chronic fatigue? Like, how did you know that that was going on for you rather than just being like genuinely tired?
Yeah, it's definitely a massive difference. Like, I think we've all been tired, even today, you have days where you're a little bit tired, you're a little bit, you've gone too hard, you've had a lot of events, you've been training really hard, you haven't been sleeping enough. Like, I think everyone's obviously going to experience fatigue and their level of being tired at some stage in their life, and you'd be, talking shit if you said that's not going to happen. But I think when it comes to chronic fatigue, it's like, it's overwhelming, it's overbearing. Like for me, it was, I couldn't get out of bed. I'd wake up in the morning and feel like I could have had 10 hours sleep, 11 hours sleep. And it was like, no matter how much sleep I had, no matter how much rest I had, no matter how much healthy food I had or did all the right things. And I was doing everything. Trust me, I was doing cold showers, I was doing saunas, I was eating organic food, I was, meditating, breath work, I was doing all the things. And no matter what, I would still wake up and feel like I'd been hit by a truck and didn't have energy. So that was the main thing for me. It's like, and how I define it to people when they ask me, it's like, it's just like constantly being not just tired, but like, how do I explain this? I guess the scientific term is like always feeling fucked. You have no energy. You're always really cooked. And then the second thing for me was performance, like training. So I remember vividly the morning that I reached out to a coach and kind of had like enough is enough is I was at the gym and I was already modifying my training and already cut back significantly in volume intensity. And this day I literally just went in, did 2 sets of shoulder press on like 15 kilo dumbbells, which was like half of what I could normally do. And 2 sets of shoulder press, I felt like I'd run a marathon. I was just in the gym and I was like, I need to lie down. I feel cooked. And at that point I was like, all right, this is ridiculous. This is not just fatigue. This is not just like, I'm not normal. Everyone's telling me I'm normal. Like I was getting really pissed off because, it's almost like when you're that sick and you have a problem with yourself, you just want someone to tell you what's wrong with you. So then going back to the doctor every single time being told, mate, I can't see anything. Like, seems like you're normal, maybe you're just depressed. Maybe you're just this, maybe you're just that. And it's like, mate, can someone just please give me an answer? So yeah, super frustrating. And I guess that was my personal experience, but everyone's going to be slightly different. But I guess, the main sort of cardinal overview is going to be like chronic fatigue is when you feel tired no matter what, and how much you sleep, and how much you do, you just constantly have this like overbearing level of fatigue that you can't seem to budge no matter what you do.
Yeah, I'm sure that there's plenty of people listening to this right now going, oh my gosh, like Dan's speaking to my soul right now. And so aside from chronic fatigue, what are some other symptoms that you commonly find that you work with as like a functional medicine like practitioner?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'll like touch on there is like, think of chronic fatigue. This is where a lot of the problems arise. Chronic fatigue in itself is a symptom. It's not a problem. So you don't treat chronic fatigue. And this is why I found like I had this experience initially, like when I was trying to deal with it. And then also I see this a lot with people that come to see me when they've seen other practitioners that have been successful. You don't treat chronic fatigue. Chronic fatigue is a symptom. The same way you don't treat back pain. Back pain is a symptom. If you had back pain, you came into my clinic, you could have back pain. And like this happened in the clinic all the time. I'd see 50 people a week and there'd be 40 clients that had back pain. The most common complaint as an osteopath. Yeah. But we'd all probably agree that 40 people have lower back pain. They're a very similar symptom. It hurts when I bend forward, hurts when I cough, hurts when I sneeze. But there can be very different reasons why that back pain occurred. One person, it's poor programming. One person, they went a bit too hard on a deadlift. The other person, they have really, poor hip mobility. Other person sits too long. Other person's overweight. They're very sedentary. So it's like, if you have different reasons that causes the back pain, you have different solutions, different prescriptions. So you always treat the root cause. You don't treat the symptom. Chronic fatigue in itself is the exact same. You can have chronic fatigue from unresolved infections. You might have a parasite. You might have a bacterial overgrowth. You could have leaky gut. You could have low thyroid. You could have low adrenal function, HPA axis dysregulation. You could have hormonal imbalances. So I think the main thing is understanding that chronic fatigue is just a symptom. It's like your red light flashing on the dashboard and it's telling you to pay attention. You can either put a tea towel over the dashboard and keep driving, or you can pull over and pop the hood. And when you pop the hood, that's when it's like, all right, let's get a blood test. Let's sit down and have a conversation. Let's dig a bit deeper into your history and figure out what is actually driving your fatigue. So that's the main thing, because it's like once we know what's driving the problem, then we actually have something tangible to go after. Because if you just come to me and you have chronic fatigue, this is what everyone does. I have chronic fatigue, my bloods are normal, I'm just going to go take some ashwagandha and sleep a little bit longer. And then they go in circles. Yeah, it's not as simple as that. We need to go a bit deeper and figure out what's causing it. So I guess that's the main thing I just wanted to touch on there. because I know a lot of people experience that. In terms of what I deal with, yeah, like the main things off the top of my head that are most common, leaky gut or like gut issues like dysbiosis, which is an imbalance of bacteria in the gut, leaky gut, which is damage to the intestinal lining, infections, so things like bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, candida, parasites, which is a byproduct of having leaky gut, low thyroid function, things like Hashimoto's disease, which is an autoimmune condition. And then probably the last one would be things to do with like brain fog, low energy, fatigue, which is, it can be a number of things that cause that, but brain fog, low energy, fatigue, bloating, and burnout are usually the biggest ones that I tend to see with people.
Yeah, 100%. So what would you say like is the most common causes for people that like, or the most common root causes for like things like bloating or brain fog, right? Like how can someone like maybe just off this podcast, right? I know that it's way better to go deeper into this, but what are some things that people can do just by listening to this and take away from it that may potentially help what they're experiencing?
Yeah, so I think obviously, again, it's like it depends on the person, what's causing it, but I'd say like general stuff, which people already know most of this stuff, but let's say people don't do it very well, and everyone wants a very fast solution, or they want to focus on something that's like specific and sexy. So I think even when it comes to working with people, a lot of people are like, what supplement can I take, or what's the thing that's going to heal it, or they get very very narrow focused on the root cause. And I love the word the root cause, but I also hate it at the same time because bit of a tangent, but would you agree that the problem with the conventional medical system is that they like to be very diagnostic focused and very reductionist approach? This is your problem, they label it, they medicate it. Would you agree that's what they do?
100%, yeah.
But then you look at functional medicine and people do the exact same thing, but they use fancy words. It's like your entire existence, every symptom you're experiencing is because you have parasite, because you have leaky gut, because you have insert problem. And then they look at that problem and then they give a specific, supplement, which is to address that thing. It's the exact same problem. So realistically, when it comes to brain fog, burnout, bloating, it's never one root cause. It's never as simple as like you have this one thing that's like causing all your problems, and if you fix that one thing, you're going to be magically better. Because having been in that position, I'm sure a lot of people listening have experienced this. You just go on the merry-go-round of like, well, this naturopath said it's a parasite, and then this naturopath said it's this, and you just chase all these different symptoms, but you're missing the biggest problem. And the biggest problem, realistically, harsh to say, is you. It's your lifestyle. And when it comes to your lifestyle, I look at it as there's 8 key areas, kind of like the wheel of life, but imagine the wheel of health. Yeah. And I go through this with my clients. As soon as I work with people, if you're not managing these 8 areas effectively, then don't even worry about supplements. Don't worry about doing any of the rest. Okay. Because these are the key things that drove you to have this problem in the first place. And they are sleep. So number 1, so sleep deficiency or dysfunctional sleep. 2 is stress management, poor stress management. 3, nutrition. So you're not eating good quality foods. You're not eating enough food. You're malnourished. You're eating toxic food-like products or fake food, which is a lot of people are doing today. Convenience is the enemy. Number 4 is good quality water and hydration. Number 5 is movement and lymphatic flow. Number 6 is digestion and gut health. Number 7 is detoxification, good liver health and good clearance. And number 8 is detoxification. So if we look at those 8 key areas, if those 8 key areas aren't functioning optimally, if you're not giving attention to those areas, and we can go through specific tangibles for each of those, that's the starting point, because that's usually where problems arise. Is the problem in one of those or all of those areas, and that starts to lead to a state of dis-ease in the body. Dis-ease means our body's at ease. Dis-ease, all the word means is our body's now out of balance. Okay, it doesn't mean that we're doomed and we have this disease for the rest of our life and we have to take medications. It just means that right now our body's not in homeostasis, not in equilibrium, and we need to figure out what's causing that. Is it too much accelerator or is it too little brake? We need to bring back balance and then give the body what it needs. If you do that just for a period of 90 days, you can start to make significant improvements in your health before you even worry about, spending $1,000 on a stool test and a supplement and all these really fancy things.
Yeah, I love what your answer was for that, because I definitely believe in the same sort of things on getting started, especially with like improving your health. I'd love to go into each of those topics a little bit deeper, especially in regards to like sleep, nutrition, water as well, because these are all things that I do, but I'd love to hear like your perspective and maybe some of the science behind these things. So like, for example, the water thing as well. A lot of people ask me like, why filtered water, why it's important. So I'd love to hear like your perspective on that, so that those that are listening may have like maybe an educated answer to why it is important to include in their lifestyle.
Yeah, sure. Also, I realized that I said detoxification twice. Obviously, it's quite important, but the eighth area is immunity. So it's so sleep, stress, nutrition, hydration, movement, digestion, detoxification, immunity, and movement. Okay, so they're the key 8 areas. So in terms of hydration, I mean, the first thing is understanding that hydration is more than just water. I think that's something that is getting a lot more traction on social media, which is good in terms of awareness. But for those who haven't, maybe don't know already, is like water is just one component of hydration, but your cells don't just need water, they need electrolytes. So it's on sodium, magnesium, potassium, all these kind of trace minerals. So the first thing that we want to look at when it comes to good quality hydration is going to be, number one, the quality of the water, and number two, making sure we're actually getting electrolytes in our water. So the first thing is water. I always look at it as there's 3 things you want to look at with quality water. First thing is its filtration. Second thing is that it's been mineralized. And the third thing, which is a nice bonus, think of this as the bow on top. You don't need this. This is like a process called ionization or hydrogenization. So we put hydrogen ions in the water, which has been shown to decrease inflammation and improve our overall health. The first thing is the filtration. This is what the questions usually come in. It's like, why do we need a water filter? Well, water quality in Australia, obviously it's not going to kill you. Everyone thinks because we don't die when we drink our water, therefore it's not bad for us. It's not as simple as that. It's the same as in the medical model, someone saying, well, you're not sick, so you're healthy. It's like, that's not how it works. Yeah, you can not be sick and not be in bed dying, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're a picture of health. Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive. So the same thing here. You can have water that's okay to drink, but it doesn't mean that it's good quality or of the highest quality. So in Australia, and there's been studies on this with, things like pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate, which is a really toxic form of pesticide, heavy metals, so aluminium, fluoride, PFAs and PFOAs, which are types of chemicals that we find in things like non-stick pans. All these things are in our water. Yeah, we don't want to be consuming these things because if we look up any of those things I just mentioned individually, they have been shown to increase inflammation in the body and increase mortality or increase risk of disease. Things like cancer, things like inflammatory, chronic inflammatory conditions, autoimmune conditions, thyroid dysfunctions, hormone dysregulation, all the nasty things. So it would make sense to try and keep all that stuff out of our water. Now, obviously that's where the filter comes in. Now, filtration is a whole nother conversation, but think of a filter as a spectrum. I like to think of a filter as a fishnet. Now, if you had a fishnet and the fishnet had really big holes in it, it's going to allow a lot of stuff to pass through. If we had a fishnet and the holes were really small, it's going to let less stuff pass through. So when it comes to a filter, you want to have a fishnet that's got the smallest amounts, or what we call a micron size. We want the smallest micron size possible because it's going to keep out the most amount of things possible, okay? So there's a filtration system in particular called reverse osmosis. It's the only type of filtration system that's going to remove 99.9% of chemicals, toxins, environmental pollutants, fluoride, heavy metals, all these things that we don't want to ingest. Anything else that's on the market, I can't speak about every single brand, but all I'll say is if you're looking for a water filter, unless it is certified reverse osmosis, it's not filtering out half the stuff that I just mentioned. Now, this is where I think of it. I explain it like a spectrum to my clients with the fishnet, yeah? Tap water's here, lots of nasty stuff. Maybe your water jug, your portable water jug that you buy is here. It's a little bit better. Maybe the fridge filter is a little bit better. Maybe a certain machine that costs thousands of dollars is a little bit better. But until you get to reverse osmosis, you're still leaving 20, 30, 40, 50% of those things in your water. So the first thing should be finding a good quality water filter. I personally use a brand called PureFlow. They're in Gold Coast. They do delivery in Gold Coast. If you're in Australia, you can order stuff. No affiliation there, just something I recommend utilize, okay? So that's the first step, is we want to get all the nasty stuff out. Now, unfortunately, when we remove all the nasty stuff, we also remove all the good stuff because it just gets rid of everything. So now we have pure water that's been completely removed of any nasty toxins, additives, but now we don't have any minerals in it. So that's the second problem. So now we want to put the minerals back in. So you can do this manually yourself, or you can add in some sodium, some potassium, some electrolytes, some Celtic salt, or ideally you just find a company that does the process for you. They filter it and then they remineralize it. And now you have good quality water that's free of chemicals and full of electrolytes. Now you're going to hydrate yourself properly. And for a lot of people, I get clients where, they have chronic headaches, chronic migraines, they're tired, they're fatigued all the time, and they change their water, and 30 days later, they're feeling significantly better. Now, I'm not saying this is the only part of the process, because there could obviously be other factors. They probably started eating healthier, they probably started sleeping better, but I've seen pretty significant improvements just by changing your water. And it makes complete sense because, your body is anywhere from 70 to 90% water, and we drink 2 to 3 liters of water a day, which is, 660 to 990 liters of water a year. It's like we're consuming a lot of water. Start to think of maybe even shower filters. You absorb up to 2 liters of water through your skin in a shower. Filtering your water in a shower, filtering the water you consume. These are simple things where what we're doing on a gross level is we're just reducing our toxin and chemical exposure. And we don't need an evidence-based research to tell you that exposing your body to less toxins and less chemicals is going to be better for your health. That's just common sense.
Yes. Yeah, I definitely can resonate with like the impacts that like filtering my water has had on like my energy. Like I find that when I'm not drinking filtered water, like I'm way more thirsty versus like if I am drinking filtered water, I'm way more hydrated, like you said. So yeah, I 100% agree. And I love your answer for that. So on to the next one you mentioned in regards to sleep, because I know that there's so many people that will be listening to this that probably don't get enough sleep. So what would you say is like the recommended amount of sleep that you suggest to your clients, especially if they are like 7-figure business owners with like a very highly like packed schedule?
Yeah, I think it depends on where people are at. I look at it as your sleep demand will depend on your state of health initially, your level of output. It's like training. If you lift more weights, you do more volume, your demand for recovery is higher. Yeah. If you train 6 days a week, you need to recover a lot more versus if you train 3 days a week. Same thing with sleep. So I kind of think, a baseline is at a bare minimum, we need 7 hours of sleep, like bare minimum. Yeah. Ideally, we want to have 8 hours of sleep. And when I say this is how much time you're actually asleep, not how much time you're in bed. So something like an Oura Ring or a Whoop or, some of these gadgets are really handy because people go, oh, hey, I go to bed, like myself included. I go to bed at 10 and I wake up at 6. It's like, did you fall asleep within 30 seconds and wake up at 6? Or did you maybe take 15 minutes to go to sleep? Maybe you woke up a few times. Like there's a thing called sleep latency, which is how long it takes you to get to sleep. And then obviously there's sleep disturbances. So some of these gadgets, like the Oura Ring, for example, shows you your sleep efficiency. And just from looking at the data of people I work with, on average, most people sit somewhere at like 65 to 75%, which is pretty terrible. People who are like optimal, that dialed in their sleep, you're looking at like 85 to 95%. No one gets 100. Yeah. If they do, I want to speak to them. I want to study them. I want to put them in a lab. Hopefully,
I've seen someone with like a 97 for their Aura score once.
Yeah, like once. I'm talking consistently though. Like if I look at Aura and you go into your settings, you can pick like monthly average. Like I've had nights where I've had 100 or 98, but it's like we're talking like consistently 98. Maybe like Brian Johnson, because all he does is spend his whole life like, doing health trends. But
yeah,
most people, 65, 75 is sort of the average. That's pretty poor. I like to see anything above 80 is a green tick. So just keep that in mind, because if you want 8 hours of sleep, you probably need to be in bed for 8.5 hours. So the next level of it is what's your recovery demands and what's your starting point. If you have, let's say, a good level of health, you don't have any burdens on the body. So there's no, we're not dealing with an infection. We're not sick. We're not trying to recover from some sort of disease or autoimmunity. Anything that's like putting a burden on our body is going to demand more energy. So I think of it this way. If 8 hours sleep is how much we need to maintain function, if you currently have dysfunction, you need 8 hours sleep to maintain, but you also probably need an extra hour or extra 2 hours to deal with all the underlying dysfunctions. And that's where a lot of chronic fatigue sets, like people experience chronic fatigue. They go, well, I'm sleeping 8 hours a night and I always feel tired. It's like, yeah, but 8 hours is for a healthy person who just needs to maintain function. Right now, your body is trying to fight infections. It's trying to heal a damaged gut. It's trying to, deal with, your thyroid problems and adrenal problems. It's like you're spending a lot of extra energy. Like currently you're spending 120% and every day you're just topping up 100%. And over time, that compounding interest is starting to catch up with you and you're creating a lot of sleep debt or a lot of energy debt. A body in energy debt is going to be a body that ends up in a disease state. So my recommendation is obviously it's very specific to the person. If you're someone who, is experiencing health conditions or experiencing symptoms or you're not in the best state, you probably need 9 hours and you maybe even 10 hours. And you might need to do that for a period of, 3 months to 6 months. You won't do it forever, but you need to get from here back to baseline. And then when you're at baseline, 8 hours might be enough. And then when you get to a certain level of health where you really dial things in, maybe you can get away with 7 hours. But again, it just depends on where you're at. And this is where it's like, don't compare against others, because I have some clients who are like, well, you can sleep for 6 hours and still, do all the things that you do. It's like, yeah, but my stuff is dialed, and it's been dialed for, 2-3 years now. But if you spoke to me in 2020, I'd sleep for 10, 11 hours and I'd still not be able to get out of bed. Different scenarios. So
Yeah.
I think general response would be, 8 hours, is a sweet spot for most people. 9, 10 might be a necessity if you're someone who's in a healing phase. And, 7 is probably not something I'd recommend, but you can have people who can get away with 6 or 7 and they're freaks. They recover really well. They're just really dialed in with their lifestyle.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really helpful tips for people listening today. And I think what I want to do now is link this almost with the next topic of nutrition, right? Because you mentioned the word adrenal fatigue. And Dan, I'm sure you get this because I do too, where clients come to you being like, oh, I can't lose weight because like my adrenals are fatigued, or they come to a point where it's like they're maybe have been in a calorie deficit for a really long time and they're still in a calorie deficit, and instead of like seeing it as their body, just their BMR like lowering because of their like lower body weight, it's like this whole thing around adrenal fatigue being the problem. So I'd love to hear about like your tips for nutrition and just a little bit on adrenal fatigue, what it is and what like is going on for people when they say that they're going through that.
Yes. So, there's a bit to unpack. I think something really useful I want to touch on is, the first thing is your body's not going to lose weight when you're in a chronically stressed state. Your brain and your body has one purpose, is survival. It is keeping you safe. So if your body senses that there's threat or danger, it's nice that you want to lose weight, but your brain is always going to win. You cannot outsmart your brain. Your brain is hardwired and has been evolutionary for millions of years to keep you safe and keep you alive. So if we're in a scenario, physiologically, biologically, at a root level where it's like, okay, is losing weight going to solve my problem, or is it going to put me potentially at risk, danger? Is it a perceived threat? So consciously, you're like, I want to lose weight. I'm in a calorie deficit. I'm training at F45 every morning. I'm, eating my chicken and broccoli. Fucking hell, I'm starving. Like, why am I losing weight? But your brain's like, hey, emotionally, cool, but I don't care about that. I care about survival. Yeah. And right now, that's not in alignment. And if there's that misalignment or disconnect, then no matter how much you want to lose weight, how much effort you put in, you're not going to lose weight. And I guess if we go a step deeper, and this is really important because yes, the adrenals and the thyroid particularly do play a massive role in your ability to lose weight. I have lots of clients who have experienced this. So especially clients who have Hashimoto's, which is a type of autoimmune thyroid condition, or hypothyroidism. Your thyroid's really, really important in regulating weight loss, regulating metabolism, and probably a whole nother podcast to go into exactly how thyroid works, but essentially it's going to play a massive role in your ability to lose weight. And I have clients who've had this, condition for 2-3 years and they haven't been able to lose a single kilo the entire time. And then once we've dealt with the underlying inflammatory processes that are causing the disease in the first place, then all of a sudden they drop. I've literally had one client drop 6 kilos in 2 weeks after not losing any weight for 3 years, because the body now feels safe and the body is now allowing you to actually go and do that process. So that's the first thing I'd say is you can't outsmart your brain, you can't outsmart your nervous system. The second thing is, and this is really interesting biologically, is so when we look at fat cells, or adipocytes is what they're called, they can actually store toxins within them as a protective mechanism to prevent you having endotoxemia. So what that means in English is if you have a large amount of toxins circulating in your blood, so let's say you're exposed to more chemicals, you're exposed to more toxins, like you're drinking shit water, you're eating food full of toxins and chemicals and preservatives, you're eating fruit and vegetables that haven't been washed, you're using toxic chemicals and products and sunscreen and face wash, and you're using all these different things, and your toxic load is really high in the body, yeah? You've got damage to your gut lining, you've got infections. Your body can only handle so much toxins. Like, yes, everyone says the argument is, well, you have a liver, your body doesn't need detox support, your liver just does it for you. Yeah, it does. But if your liver's hired to work 40 hours a week and it's working 60 hours a week, it's eventually going to get pretty tired. Would you agree? So if we have such a high toxic load and we're overburdening our detoxification system, so our lymphatic system, our liver, kidneys, our gut, then we have too many toxins in the bloodstream and it's going to overwhelm the system. So now we have a situation where our brain is communicating with our body, and we have these chemicals, we have these receptors in our body, which can pick up on how many toxins are in the bloodstream, and they can tell our brain what's going on. Now, if your brain, again, doesn't feel safe and it's sensing danger and it's going, hey, there's way too many toxins in the bloodstream, we can't deal with this, we're overwhelmed, what can we do? And what they can do is we can store toxins within fat cells to get them out of the bloodstream. Pretty smart, eh? So now, I want you to imagine you've got a fat cell. This is a fat cell. And within this fat cell, you've got 100 toxins. Now, in order for you to lose fat, you need a calorie deficit. You need to be in an energy deficit, which can be from eating less food or doing more activity. So we need an energy deficit. When your body's in an energy deficit, we stimulate a process called autophagy, or we become catabolic. We want to break down cells. Now, in order for me to lose fat, I need to break down this fat cell. And it's called lysis, like the cell breaks, okay? In order for me to break that fat cell, if I break it, what's going to get released back into the bloodstream? All those toxins. So now your brain has to communicate and go, hey, it's like I always kind of say it's a bit of a piss take. It's like your brain calls up and says, hey, man, how are we doing down there? And your body says, mate, we're struggling. Please do not release more. We cannot deal with it. Okay, cool. I won't do it. Yeah. So it's like a bit of a conversation between the brain and the body going, do I feel safe? Can we handle, like, do we have enough workers to handle the incoming demand to the store? No, we don't. Don't let more in. And that's kind of what's happening. So then right now you're like, oh, I'm trying to lose weight, do all the right things. Why can't I lose weight? It's because you're trying to fight your physiology. And in order for you to break that fat cell, you're going to have to release all these toxins into the bloodstream, and it's going to cause chaos. So your brain goes, fuck that. I want to feel safe. That's not safe. That's potentially threatening and dangerous. So we're going to stay fat. How do you lose weight then? Well, if we want to lose weight, we have to look backwards. Like, why do you have all this? Why are we in this situation in the first place? So I always say to people when they come to me and they've got thyroid conditions, autoimmune conditions, gut conditions, or just people who are like, I've been trying to lose weight for 10 years. I can't lose weight no matter what I do. Obviously, the first thing is, have you been tracking your food? Are you actually doing the things you're saying you're doing? Do a bit of an audit, because lots of people like to say they're in a calorie deficit and they actually have a few cheeky chocolate bars they didn't tell you about. So, first thing is make sure we do an audit. But if they're actually doing all the right things and they still can't lose weight, and they've got their blood work looks terrible and they've got all these symptoms, then the first thing you have to do is go through, a bit of a journey with improving their health and their internal physiology. If we can reduce toxic load in the body, which is all the 8 areas of health, we can deal with infections, we can deal with gut health, we can improve thyroid function, then naturally the body's now going to have capacity to increase toxic load. It can break that fat cell, release the toxins into the body can actually handle it, and now we start to lose weight in the process. But until you do that process, you're just going to have a lot of fat cells full of toxins, and this is why they say that fat is toxic to the body and muscle is protective, because fat literally stores toxins in it. So it's a double whammy. Not only you have higher levels of body fat, you have higher levels of toxins in your body. No wonder you feel like shit. You're going to have low energy because you have high amounts of fat and high amounts of toxins. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit. I know it's a lot of science.
No, I love this. I really do love this, because for me, even in my own personal journey, like when I moved to London, you'd think like going from the Gold Coast, like I was having, like, everything was very like organic. I don't know if whoever lived in the Gold Coast listening to this, you'd understand, like it's all very like farmers markety and very fresh produce. You have the fresh, clean air, and then coming to London, it's the air quality. You really feel it straight away if you're not used to. There's lots of like different things that were completely stark contrast for me environmentally coming from the Gold Coast to London. But at the same time, the last year and a half, I've lost like 10 kilos, and not from being in a really extreme calorie deficit at all, but really I'm emphasized working on my mindset and getting out in nature like every single day. And I really resonate with what you've said here, Dan, because I feel like in the last year and a half, because I've been like less stressed, focusing on getting more sleep, focusing on having like more like whole foods and just like protein, lean meat for protein, rather than focusing on like supplements and powders and etc. It's like I've noticed that my body's felt safe enough to really just like let that go. And I actually really wanted to explore with you, and I think this would land in regards to stress as well and link with that, but the link between emotions and the dis-ease in the body, and what your thoughts are around like someone who's holding on to trauma or negative beliefs or emotions, how that then plays out or shows up in the body? Like, what's your experience as a practitioner with clients and that?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm aware of it, and I definitely fully believe in it, but it's not something I personally do. It's probably not in my wheelhouse. So I can speak from a position of knowledge, but probably not as much experience, in the sense of like, I work with people, like, put it this way. I have a lot of clients they've definitely got like an emotional component and a physiological component. I always look at healing has to be both. You can never have healing one way or the other. So I have a lot of people I refer to who are like holistic healers and holistic coaches, and in the more of the psychology space. I think you've got like a Venn diagram. You've got psychology and you've got physiology. Now, we use like something like anxiety or depression, a bit of a taboo topic, but let's think about them for a second. It's like they're obviously mental health disorders, or they're classified as mental health disorders. But if you look at the biology or the physiology, it's like we know that 95% of your serotonin, 50% of your dopamine are produced in your small intestine, and those things regulate your mood. So it's going to be very, very challenging for someone that has some sort of emotional dysfunction or some sort of neurological dysfunction to fully heal if you're trying to work through trauma. Like, let's say, you're going to do whatever it is, you're doing some sort of healing work, and it's obviously very focused on changing your beliefs, changing your behaviors, rewiring your brain. It's like, it's really hard to rewire and restructure something when there's chaos. Like, imagine your house is on fire and you're trying to renovate your house. It just doesn't make sense. Maybe you put the fire out and then you have more like renovated it. So that's kind of like what I think of. We know that the gut in particular has such a massive effect on emotions. Might make more sense to either simultaneously work on both. Like, I'm healing the gut and doing more of the physiological, and you're working with someone like yourself and you're working through the traumas and the emotions and stuff like that. And together we get a better outcome versus, me just doing what I do or you just doing what you do. And it's like, we're kind of missing it. So I think that's the first point. The second point though is, for sure, definitely when it comes to chronic disease, autoimmunity, there's almost always 99% of the time, if you go through the history and you ask some questions about when did this begin, there's some sort of traumatic life event. Like I had a girl the other day and it was like, when did all this start? And I was back in 2014. Okay. Like in particular, was there anything that happened, around that time? I can't really think of it. I'm like, okay, like, go a bit deeper, ask a few more questions. Well, actually that was like, I lost my job and then I traveled to a different country and I felt really alone and, this is and this. It's like, oh, okay, interesting. So you had like massive life change, traumatic event, higher levels of stress. And then surprise, surprise, it's brought up some stuff to the surface. And now you're experiencing like a physical symptom of an emotional manifestation. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, was it the chicken or the egg? Is it the emotions that drove the physiology, or is it the physiology that drove the emotions? And realistically, it's like an infinity symbol. They both it's a positive feedback loop and both of them work together. So I think, to answer your question, there's definitely an emotional component to pretty much every single trauma. Obviously, probably another podcast to go through, there's specific things like anger, unresolved anger tends to be, things like skin breakouts tends to be associated with a lot of gastrointestinal issues, issues with if you're into the chakras and stuff like that. Depends, where you want to go. It's like a lot of issues around here can be associated with thyroid issues. Like, so yes, there is a consideration. I'd just say it's probably not my area of expertise in my wheelhouse, but it is something that I have enough awareness of when I work with people to go, hey, is there a psychological, emotional component here that this person needs to work through? And there's even been times where I've had people reach out to me to do coaching and I'm like, hey, it's probably best you go to work with this person first, because I can see that like there's so much psychological trauma going on here that everything I give you is not even going to work. Like, I need your nervous system to be in a state where it's not so trigger happy and so stressful, because right now anything I give you, your body's just going to reject. So I think, there's a bit of nuance to it of like who's actually in a position where the nervous system's ready to receive, surrender, and allow healing to occur versus whose nervous system's so potentially jacked up and traumatized that we need to let the gates down first before we can then go in and do the more physiological work.
Yeah, and I really love and appreciate your answer, because for me, this is something I'm extremely passionate about. Like, I feel like we've had very similar journeys, like starting off in like the personal training, like physical space. And like, obviously you've gone in to do more of like the inner deep work for like the body, right? And I've been more curious about like the energetics of how like your memories and your subconscious mind then manifest in the body, and the symptoms of the body is the emotions that we experience on a deeper level, just like trying to come out of our body. And This is something that I'm really passionate about. And I love kind of linking those two worlds together, like the physical and the spiritual, and bridging that so that we do have this phase or new age sort of medicine coming through where it's not just about, like you said earlier, just having this simple diagnosis and band-aiding what's actually going on in those like deeper levels. And I'm really excited because the work that you're doing and the work that am doing as well, I really believe is going to help just, or continue to help so many people. And I think it's a way of the future. So yeah, I am so glad that I had you on today, Dan. And I wanted to just ask you, in case my audience want to follow your journey, connect with you, work with you, how do they find you?
Do we have 2 minutes? That was something that would be really useful.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So I was just touching on like what you were saying there is, I think the biggest key takeaway, I was going to say like stress, sleep in the different areas, is the big thing to take away that people don't understand is that there's different types of stresses, but they all have the exact same physiological effects. I think your brain is wired for survival, and it's wired to detect threat and danger, or perceived threat and danger. Now, most of us live in 2024. I don't know about you, haven't been chased by a tiger in the last 20 years. So most of us are pretty safe and there's not these things happening, but we still experience stress on a daily basis. So you can have physical stress, I think training, this could be from breakdown of your gut barrier. You can have pathogenic stress from infections. You can have emotional stress. So emotions, which is what you just said, even though it's not, something that's physical, it's like you being in a fight with your partner or stress at work or things. It's like that perceived stress still creates the exact same physiological feedback loop of, your adrenals get activated, you release cortisol, we activate our sympathetic nervous system, blood flow goes away from our brain and our vital organs towards our limbs, less blood flow to the brain and vital organs. Doesn't sound like a good thing over a long period of time. Literally every organ in your body needs oxygen and blood flow. If you spend 80% of your day in a stressed state, you're spending 80% of your day without any blood flow to your vital organs. No wonder your vital organs start to shut down and be in a state of disease. So I think it's understanding there's different types of stresses. The last two, there have been environmental stresses, so all the stuff we talked about with like chemicals and toxins, pollutants, etc. So we understand that and we go, hey, stress isn't just how you feel. Stress is all these different areas. If we can manage stress, that's going to be the key thing, because stress is literally the root of all inflammation, the root of all disease. So getting to stress is the number one pillar before we look at anything else is going to be the thing that's going to amplify your health, prevent disease long term. So just wanted to leave people with that. So that a lot of people tend to think, emotional stress is different to physical stress, which is different to this. It's all just one big bucket. And most people have their bucket 80% full just from their daily lifestyle. So changing the daily lifestyle is the key to changing the outcome.
And what would be like your 3 top things that you do in your life to reduce stress?
I don't reduce stress. I just get better at handling it, because I think that's the best way to look at it. Is you can't avoid it. You just like resilience is the definition of resilience is you can handle more stress and keep soldiering on. Yeah, I'm sure there's a better definition than that. But essentially, everyone looks at like, how can I reduce stress? How can I reduce stress? Like simple things you can do to reduce stress would be around improving your quality of water, improving your quality of nutrition, improving your quality of sleep. Yeah, because when those things go down the toilet, that's increasing what's called allostatic load, which is internal stress in the body. So it's less about meditation and journaling. All that stuff is great. But if you're meditating and journaling and doing all those things, but you're still eating shit food, not sleeping enough, drinking, toxic water, and not, have toxic relationships, they're the biggest problem. So number one, remove anything that's unproductive. I kind of go, there's 2 categories of stress. There's productive stress, there's unproductive. Unproductive is the thing that I just mentioned. Get rid of them or minimize them. Step 1. Step 2 is then actively seek out productive stress. Things that are going to build your resilience and build your stress muscles so you can gain a bigger, increase your capacity and you can handle stress better. And this is going to be training. Yeah. This is going to be things like ice baths, saunas, training, breath work, because that's going to increase your capacity. Right now, if your capacity is this big and your day-to-day life is like this, there ain't much room for error. No wonder you're getting triggered 10 times a day and you're spending most of your day in a sympathetic state. We can expand your capacity to be this big, and your day-to-day stuff is like a walk in the park. And you're going to spend most of your day in a parasympathetic state, just healing, repairing, regenerating. Your health's going to be a lot better. So I think don't look at how you can reduce stress. Look at how you can get rid of unnecessary stresses, and then how you can seek out stress that's productive to expand your capacity. That's my advice.
I love this so much. I feel like we could continue talking for hours, Dan, and maybe we'll have to get you back on again another time because I really believe that this conversation's been so helpful and I know it will help so many people that have tuned in today. So for people that want to tune into what you're doing and like work with you, how can they find you? What's your page? What is your Instagram?
Yeah.
How can people link up with you?
Yeah, so at the moment, Instagram will be the best place to find me. It's at dr.daniel.kirkbride. I can send that to you in the show notes. And for anyone listening, I'll also send you through a link. I have a free blood work audit that they can do if they'd like to figure out where they're at. So it doesn't cost anything. They just got to pay for their own blood tests. And essentially what they can do is they can pay for their blood test, and they can get their blood test done, and then I'll go through it personally and tell them exactly the things they can work on. This is a good starting point if you're not sure where you're at and you're having a bit of a struggle like I did with the doctors where you go see the doctor and everything's normal. So what we'll do is we'll compare it against the functional reference ranges so we can pick up on things a bit earlier, and then I can give you exactly an understanding where you're at with things. So if anyone is listening and wants to kind of get an understanding where their health's at, completely free, no strings attached, I'll give that link to you as well in the show notes. And it can be a good starting point for someone on their journey who wants to know more about where their health is at.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That's so helpful. And one last question before we finish up today would be, if you were to tune into the first answer that comes to your mind, what does everyone, the collective, need to hear from you right now? Like one last piece of advice that you think someone listening needs to hear right now. And it doesn't have to relate to what we've spoken to today. The first
thing that came to mind is just keep going. It'll all be okay.
I love that. Thank you so much, Dan, for coming on today. I really appreciate your time, and I'm sure we'll chat again very, very soon.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me. It was amazing.